Welcome back to the Green Beans Go channel. It's your host, me. And don't be overwhelmed by this right now. We're going to read it together, guys. I'm not going to throw something on the screen and expect you to just start reading. We're going to read this together. We're going to talk through it. Where do I begin with this? We'll start with the beverage. This is Diet Dr. Pepper. Dr. Pepper Zero Sugar. Is there a more controversial soda than Dr. Pepper? It has some of the most intense lovers in the soda landscape. People who just will tell you about, like, it's their personality. Dr. Pepper's their personality, and then it has, a side of this extreme. Dr. Pepper is the worst soda ever invented. It tastes like X, Y, or Z. I have found that recently it's been quite enjoyable. But I do zero sugar. Don't need all those extra things in my body. Not that aspartame's great. Let's talk about the important things. When I was in college studying to be a teacher, we had to do a philosophy of education. And it was horrible in some ways and great in others. And I think it was horrible because I did not feel like, and I've never been the type to just say what is supposed to be said. I've been someone who likes to think about why things are the way they are. It drives my wife nuts. Why do you worry about that? Just, why are you you think about things too much, right? She's not that aggressive at me, but that's the idea of how my brain goes. And so my philosophy of education was pretty cynical, and we don't need to get into it, but essentially I wasn't going to kiss up to a professor for a grade. I was going to say what I thought, but my professor was not someone who necessarily appreciated that. So that was kind of the tension there. Regardless, I think about sports betting a lot because that's what I've done for a while. I did it for some years while I was a teacher. I quit teaching. I did it for a year alone until the limits got so bad that I could no longer do it. And I had to shift. And I said, I love this space. I don't want to go back to teaching. I want to stay in the sports betting world. I love making content. Let's merge the two. And hopefully in X number of years, content pays bills that sports betting was paying, but can no longer pay due to limits. Oh, get account. We'll get to that. We'll get to getting accounts. And so this is the first video in my gambling, my philosophy of gambling, or my philosophy of sports betting. Haven't decided what I'm going to call it. Probably this philosophy of sports betting is probably more appropriate, because I think gambling in terms of slots and roulette and things like that, there's a slight difference because people understand that slots, most people understand that it's a losing battle. Like, you're going to lose long term. Most people, it's for entertainment, outside of the small people who are, addicted to it. And that will appear in my second video. So in this video, this is going to be like an intro to my philosophy of gambling, philosophy of sports betting. And then in the second video, we'll try to be more technical and try to really analyze the psychology behind it. And that's another thing. I've always loved psychology. And I think the psychological impact of the sports betting community, I don't want to say it's discussed less in certain circles. We'll just say that. I think there are circles that exist where the psychology, what sports betting does to a person over time or in the short term, when they win, when they lose, those concepts are discussed in small circles. But in the EV community, or the sharp community, or the community of sports bettors, like professional sports bettors, the idea of psychology, the idea of emotion is lesser than the perceived or hoped outcome mathematically. It is always, and we'll talk about these things when I read this, it's always, yes, losing is bad, but I know long-term I'll make money. Or, of course, the losses sting, but it doesn't upset me overall because I know I'll make money. And so if you are someone who feels the loss, like I put $50 on a bet that I don't even like, quote unquote, but it's plus EV or it's good to the market, and I lose that $50, I am not the type of person who sits there and says, oh, that was a good bet. Good bets win, right? Like maybe not mathematically over time, but common sense, psychology, human psychology. It's hard to overcome. I made a losing bet that was good. And I think that's where bankroll starts to be under discussed. Because a lot of these EV and professional bettors, they'll say bet your edge. When your edge is greater, you should bet more. But they don't talk about betting your emotions. They don't talk about, no, don't bet your edge. Bet your emotions. In terms of, if you're going to be upset that you lose, if you see an EV plus EV bet pop up, I have a button on my arm. If you see an EV bet pop up, or one with value, and you say, I am going to, and I get it, guys, stop you right there. All right, that's why you establish a bankroll, that you will be fine losing long term. That's why you do quarter Kelly. That's why you let math take it over. It's a pepper break. Sure. But I also think deciding what you're comfortable losing long term is a tricky ask. And of course it varies for people. It's more complex. At the end of the day, you can kind of discover your bankroll by working backwards, I think. And I guess this is maybe my argument, that my philosophy of sports betting is less mathematical and therefore may mean that you win less long term. But I'm going to pose the chance that maybe it will mean you will be happier long term. Okay, so maybe that's the longest preview to an image on the screen in the history. Put it in the comments if you've already read it. If you said, I'm done listening to this guy, I'm going to read what he says. If you can read while someone is talking, you're already better than I. Let's talk about the psychology of that. Let's give you my philosophy on multitasking, because I can't do it. Here we go. This is my post I made on Twitter today, and I'm going to read it to you on my screen because it's too small over here. I hope it's big enough for you. And I've titled it Running Out of Indefinitely, which I was proud of, but more on that later. If you view sports betting as a money-making endeavor, in other words, what I just talked about, no, we're going to read it through once, and I'm not going to side comment, and we're going to go back through and just walk through each of these paragraphs and discuss it all. I think that's the best way to do it. That's what we would do in class when I was a teacher, right? I wouldn't start doing the rhetorical analysis on the first paragraph. I'd read it, let them get the context, and then walk through it. Running out of indefinitely. If you view sports betting as a money-making endeavor, I know I'll make money long-term doing this. How much do losses impact you? Losses is loose here, as they come in all shapes and unit sizes. Or maybe it can be rephrased. If you are impacted emotionally by the loss, why? Obviously, if you were upset every single day, you're not making money long-term. Rarely do people get upset when they win. Check on these people. This is why I struggled with plus EV betting. I don't like to lose, but there is a price where that loss wouldn't hurt or upset me more than, say, losing a pickup basketball game. Yeah, I might be a little upset, but it's not going to impact me for an hour, more than an hour, right? But at that price, which would be about $5 or $10, what's the point? And that's not a unit shame of any kind, but monitoring an odds screen, being tethered to a phone, etc., that work that goes with plus EV betting isn't worth what a $5 unit size would generate, even running slightly above average in terms of value. Not to mention, I can't even get $5 or $10 down on a lot of books with a lot of props anymore anyway. This is the paradox I'm discovering about this space, or maybe about myself. I want to make money doing this being sports betting. Isn't that the goal? Isn't that why we all bet? I did make money doing this, but the way that I did it will always end in limits. One of the biggest issues facing this space is the perception that you can make money indefinitely. If you know for a fact that you will make money long term, so do the books, or they'll figure it out before indefinitely runs out. This leads me to two rough conclusions. You either find a way to consistently get accounts, burner phones, new IP addresses, phone plans, a game of cat and mouse that you can possibly still lose in the long term if you run cold. Or you realize that the only thing gambling promises 100% of bettors, sharp, degen, and somewhere in between, is paying a price to be entertained. I've left a movie where I've paid $15 feeling pretty ripped off because the film was poor, but I'm usually over it by the time I pull in the driveway. Okay. And then I comment to myself like a psycho, and I said, I'm not comfortable in the skin of a sports bettor, and the middle ground between degen, square, fish is narrow. So let's go through this. And if you've made it this far, thank you. And I feel like I should have put this caveat at the beginning, because those who've made it this far are either seething in anger at how stupid I am or how much they disagree. And maybe they do need to hear this, or they're like, yeah, this makes sense. Again, I'm not saying I'm right. It's hard to discuss matters of psychology, matters of human emotion, these sort of things with professional sports bettors because they are so used to black and white. It's a numbers game. There's no nuance. And there's also this tethering of arrogance or superiority. I won this much money, right? Units talk in some ways. Your ROI is somewhat valued, but if my ROI is greater than someone else's, but they made more money, I can't go to the grocery store and buy tonight's dinner in ROI. Write that down. Put that down in the comments. Let me get that tattooed. I might actually write that down. I'll watch the video later and write it down. So that's why these conversations can be difficult with people in the community. And I don't hear people talking about these things in the community. And it also makes you sometimes look like an idiot in the community. And here we are. Let's be idiots together, shall we? All right. So my point in this, we'll run through this real quick, even though you guys probably get the points. If you view sports betting as a money-making endeavor, how much do losses impact you? So you see my example down below. I gave an example at the beginning with $50 units. You can make money doing this in the short term. But if you want to make money doing this I'm not going to deny that. You can sign up for a number of services that are down there in the description. And you can put some money in my account by doing it. We'll talk about that. But at the end of the day, you may make money. It's not going to be a money printer. I cannot tell you when the book will decide that your action is not wanted. And I think the problem with this space is it sells the dream that that is the case. So let me talk about myself. Just talk about me for a second. And I'll stop with the generalizations because those probably are not helpful. I understand that. And there's going to be room for disagreement, and disagreement is fine. We can have a conversation. But what we cannot debate is how I feel. Facts don't care about your feelings, and feelings don't care about your facts. Put that on a t-shirt too. Feelings don't care about your facts. How about that? And I think maybe the problem is that the fact that you can make money long term isn't a fact, because it requires an asterisk. You have to be able to get accounts, or you have to be able to run better than average, or at least average, or at least to the average of your value, right? Like you can bet EV props and lose long term. So me, how does it impact me? I hated teaching. I hated teaching. I hated who I was after I got, it was exhausting. We'll just say that. It was exhausting. I fear that someday I will have to go back to that. That should not be a fear that somebody has. Okay. I should not be worried, quote unquote, about having to return to something that made me miserable. I know a lot of people do that every day. And I'm not saying I can't get a more traditional job. I absolutely could. But at the end of the day, I love doing this. This is what I got to, ironically, do teaching, but it was not worth what else I had to deal with. In other words, the wins of teaching. What made teaching plus EV, what made me excited was winning money, was being able to discuss these things that make us so human. That win did not ever outweigh the losses, the overall. And I think in this space, right, and I'm going off topic, so we won't go there yet, but the bottom line is I love maybe this. I love making content. If somebody said, we're going to pay you a livable wage or less, slightly less. I'll take slightly less than a livable wage. Put that on a t-shirt. Who's keeping a chart of the t-shirts we've made? I think we have 3. Somebody please find them all. I'll take less than a living wage. I'll settle for less than a living wage if it's something I enjoy. If somebody said that and they said you get full rights to whatever content you made, just explore the world, just explore how things are, how the mind works, how people interact, and give us your opinion and engage and have discourse and have conversation, and somehow sports are mixed in. Somehow you get to follow and track sports too, sports and winning and lose, all that's jumbled into one job. That's a good job. And that's kind of what I hope for with this. Doing what I love, which is talking about sports and the human brain, right? The feelings, the people. Because I think a lot of times in sports and in sports gambling, people take opinions as facts, or there's statistics that prove something, right? But feelings don't care about you. I think there's sometimes more things than the facts say, than the stats say. To give you an example, right? Grant Holmes, this is for the Atlanta Braves, had 15 strikeouts against the Rockies a few series back. They lost the game. So you look at the stats and you're like, how does this happen? Right? They're crazy. And that's why we love sports. A guy got 15 strikeouts against the Rockies. Would the Braves win by 12? Well, they lost. Huh? Right? That's why we love it. We love the excitement. We love the mystery. And I think sometimes for me, what ruins those things we desperately crave, right? The excitement, the talking points, is losing money. Right? And for so long, I was betting and making money. And so I conditioned myself to thinking this happens. And I think being online, being on Twitter, being on X, scrolling through and seeing guys bet $100 to win $11,000. Whoa, that does something to the human psychology. And then they buy Discords on this promise that, and this isn't about Discords. We had a video about Discord, guys. And so there's this paradox where I'm exploring it, and this is not a published theory. And maybe we'll leave it here, just kind of my theory right now. And then we'll make sort of a better second video, a more defined second video, we'll say. I guess my theory is the paradox of sports betting is we do it to make money. But we should never be upset when we lose money more than a pickup basketball game. I think everybody has if you're competitive, losses suck. But if somebody tells you, hey, over the last month, you're down whatever your number is, and you go, oh, yeah, if you would have told me I would have lost blank in a month, I'd be upset, right? If that happens, we got to bet less. But betting less means winning less if we win. Right? And so finding that balance of enough where the win feels good, but the loss doesn't hurt, I think is one of the most under-discussed conversations in this space. Because sometimes a sharp bettor will say, well, that's why you have a unit size. That's why you have, which I think is a good practice. But regardless, those things have been on my mind. We have 3 t-shirts to design. And I hope you'll join me for part 2, which will be more, this will be more black and white for the professional bettors out there.